Good afternoon and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here on this beautiful yet solemn day as we mark 20 years since the attacks on September 11th. 20 years, it just feels like yesterday. The loss is still shocking, and we do know that 20 years have passed. 20 years of missed milestones, birthdays, weddings, anniversaries, countless sunrises and sunsets, the opportunity to enjoy beautiful days like this. In many ways, it has been a lifetime. In the audience with us, we have family and friends of those killed on 9/11 and those who have died since 9/11 related illnesses. Today, we will unveil a new memorial, the Westchester County 9/11 First Responders Memorial. It's dedicated to those who spent all those hours on the pile, selflessly searching for those who were lost, at grave risk to themselves. They never gave up. Their names will be etched in stone. They are our forever heroes who gave their own lives. And we hope that this memorial will provide some comfort to the families. Many of you are tuning in online, and it's unfortunate that you can't all be here with us here today. In these unprecedented times, however, we should focus on our collective grief and not on the distance between us. So if you please rise for the opening procession and the presentation of colors by the Westchester County Police Department Ceremonial Unit Color Guard.
Detail, attend, cut. By the center, quick, long.
I pledge allegiance
Present, arm.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If there's a day to sing together, this is a good day to sing together. Our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Order! On! Present! On! Order! On!
Honor guard. Right. Please. Forward. Mark.
Good afternoon again, everyone. My name is Marcus Solis. I'm a reporter. Please sit. I'm a reporter with Channel 7 Eyewitness News and a Dobbs Ferry resident. And it is truly my honor to be here with you today. And some thank yous. First off, thank you, Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins. Thank you to Department of Emergency Services Commissioner Richard Wishney, Elizabeth Devukai, and the Westchester County Department of Public Safety for leading us in this opening of the memorial and honoring our country. Thank you to New York Presbyterian Lawrence ICU nurse Carlo Jose CJ Zenerosa for that wonderful rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, and the beautiful music performed by the Purchase Conservatory of Music. Thank you to the Pipes and Drums of the Police Emerald Society of Westchester County, and the Westchester County Police Ceremonial Unit for presenting the wreath of remembrance at our beam of steel. And finally, thank you To County Executive George Latimer for having me here today, it is truly my honor as we embody the spirit of unity and patriotism, and we come together to remember. 20 years ago, I was in Manhattan on September 11th, had a bit of a late start, and I was actually on my way to New Jersey for an assignment. So I was a little too far and it's too late when I was turned around to head to ground zero. So I was directed to the hospital. It's part of what we do. We cover our bases, and the expectation was that's where the injured would be taken, treated, and helped. And sadly, we know that really didn't come to pass the way we thought it would. For me, the focus quickly became the story that emerged that day and through that night, reporting on the families that started to descend on the hospital, looking for the loved ones that they hadn't heard from, hoping that they were there. And I had to ask about one of our own, our engineer, Don DeFranco, who was killed working on the transmitter on the 110th floor. And despite that loss, I was lucky. I didn't have a relative working in the building, and a close friend who's a structural engineer at the World Trade Center, he survived. So for me, in the days and the weeks and the months that followed, my job has been to tell the stories on those lost, on those impacted, and sadly on those who have died after being sickened as a result. And yesterday I had the chance to meet some of you here at the First Responders Memorial, the powerful companion to the rising. And I reported yesterday and this morning on the loss and the pain that continues today. So as a reporter, my job is to tell stories fairly and accurately, and I've been doing it a long time, so I don't really get nervous. But when it comes to memorializing someone, I do feel pressure. I want it to be perfect. I want the viewers to feel, and I want the families to be proud. And maybe even more so over these 20 years, I've become a father, I moved to Westchester, I can relate to the routine that so many of our neighbors did that morning. Parking at the train station, catching the Metro North early, taking the subway at Grand Central. I did that in reverse today to get back from Lower Manhattan. And that collective experience undoubtedly helps me do my part in helping so that we never forget. And I hope these memorials provide some comfort for the families where they can reflect, they can grieve, and for visitors, particularly those too young to really know, so that they can learn and they can understand that even though Ground Zero is some 35 miles away, the impact is felt in communities far and wide. It is felt here at home. And so that's why it is my honor to be here with you today as we recognize the countless lives that were touched and impacted 20 years ago. Now we will have the first of 3 interfaith prayers delivered by Rabbi Howard Goldsmith, who is president of the Westchester County Board of Rabbis from the Congregation Emmanuel of Westchester.
This year, 9/11 falls on Shabbat, on Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath. Each week, no matter the events of our world or the tribulations of our own lives, Shabbat gives us time for calm, a chance to appreciate all the blessings in our lives. The gift of Shabbat helps us deal with the challenges of life. It infuses our spirit with a sense of calm and purpose that help us through the other 6 days of the week. As we remember our friends, neighbors, and loved ones who perished 20 years ago on 9/11, may the goodness of their lives fill our souls with calm. May we recognize the blessings that they brought to us that still endure in our lives today. Dear God, allow that recognition of blessing to infuse our lives with purpose, so that we can face our world with renewed commitment to making it better, and thus ensure the legacy of our loved ones lives on. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.
Thank you, Rabbi. And now I'd like to introduce the chairman of the Westchester County Board of Legislators, Ben Boykin.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. 20 years For some, it seems a long time ago. For some, it seems like yesterday. It could be a blink of an eye, or for many of you, an eternity. 20 years ago on this day, we were all filled with raw emotions. You saw your loved ones go to work. They didn't return. A normal day, a beautiful day, we all remember that. This we could not believe was happening to us in America. And there we were, looking, trying to find answers, looking for our loved ones. The wounds that inflicted on 9/11 will never be forgotten. The scars may heal somewhat, but you will have those wounds forever. There are voids that can never be filled, memories that can never be forgotten. The wedding mist, the grandchildren, the other events that are so important in life that many of you will never be able to have with your loved ones 20 years. We hope that to pray that the survivors, that you've been able to find some measure of peace over these last 20 years. I know it hasn't been easy. And we all know what we were doing 20 years ago. I was at the White Plains Post Office. I got home and I saw the second plane hit the second tower. Again, unbelievable. We know the chaotic, and we also remember all those first responders that ran up to help those that were trying to get out of the building. And today, we are unveiling a new memorial to those first responders that were on the POW that have subsequently passed away that you will see on the back of your program today. We must also honor them. While many years from now, we will be passed away and we won't have living memories, but we have the rising. We have the new memorial that we have for our first responders, because it is important that we always remember, that we never forget those that have sacrificed so much, given the ultimate sacrifice, and those that over time that will continue to give the sacrifice. We can never forget. We must always remember those beautiful moments. But we can never forget those special moments that those people will never be with us. So let's continue to love each other. Let's continue to remember each other. And let's remember, we are one nation united under God. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And now I'd like to introduce Matt McCauley. Matt was a first responder, and he is co-chair of the Westchester County 9/11 First Responder Memorial Committee.
Thank you. My name is Matthew McCauley. I was a New York City police officer. I was a paramedic. I'm a 9/11 responder. I'm lucky enough to be standing before you today. And I've been to Washington, D.C. I was one of the people down there with John Stewart, John Field, the entire team, Louis Alvarez, working on the benefits for the 9/11 community. But it didn't end there. I'm the co-chair of this new memorial that's up here. And today my thoughts were, what does it mean to be the co-chair? My co-chair, when this first started, was Peter Woods. Peter Woods is not with us anymore. Amazing man, touched so many in the community. That was my co-chair. The reality, though, is when Peter and I worked together, he always said the same thing and we had the same conversations. We have to get this right. It's about the families, and we may be up there someday. It wasn't about Peter. It's not about me. It's about the families. So the reality is the co-chair isn't Peter Woods. The co-chair is reserved for the 41 names that are up there, including Peter. The co-chair is everybody on the rising that they were looking for when they were down at Ground Zero. Ground Zero, the Pentagon, Fresh Kills, and in Shanksville were the largest rescue and recovery operation in this country has ever seen. And you see the men and women in uniform all around here. They worked from September 11th of 2001 until May 30th of 2002. They never stopped. There's going to be an eternal light that's behind me here to honor them. This committee did so much to make sure that the families were represented and respected. That's all it's about. It's about the families. None of these responders who are on the wall behind me, none of the responders that are standing next to you today, they really don't care about themselves. They want to make sure their families are taken care of. And we will continue to show that respect to their families as we showed the respect to the families of those that were lost that day. They kept looking. We will keep respecting them forever. 9/11 has taken more 9/11 responders and more people since the day of 9/11. The memorial behind us has 41 names on it. We know that next year, thanks to County Executive Latimer and our vision, that we will have to expand that. When you come back next year, there will likely be 2 walls there, and it will continue. We will never forget our 9/11 responders. We will never forget those that they were looking for that day. That's the respect that we have for everybody, and that's what this is about. So the co-chair, coincidentally reserve chair that was next to me today, is for all of you. It's for all the families. It's for the responders' families. It's for the survivors' families, and it's for those that we lost that day. Have to thank County Executive Latimer. It was an amazing committee made up of responders' families. County Executive Latimer stepped in, said, we got to get this done. It doesn't get done without County Executive Latimer. He saw our vision. He knew that we wanted something that was simple, understated, and represented all the responders. He let us do what we needed to do. Now the co-chairs that are all on those walls and all on the rising, they will be here forever and be memorialized. I leave you with this. As I said before, rescue and recovery operations ended on May 30th of 2002. We'll celebrate that day in May of this coming 2022. It'll be the 20th anniversary. And it'll be a day that the first responders will remember where they brought closure to everybody. And we'll have a plaque memorialized at that time to keep the faith back there. I leave you with this as a quote from Abraham Lincoln. I pray that our Heavenly Father may assuage the anguish of your bereavement and leave you only the cherished memory of the loved and lost, and the solemn pride that must be yours to have laid such a costly sacrifice upon the altar of freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. And now prayer from Islamic Center of Mid-Westchester Imam Nabel Omran.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings on you all. My name is Nabil Omran. I'm here today representing the Mosque Collaborative of Westchester County, representing the Northeast Yonkers Muslim Association and the Hudson Valley Islamic Community Center. Thank you for inviting us for the unveiling of today's beautiful memorial. We pray for our brothers and sisters whom we lost 20 years ago from now. We pray for their families, their loved ones, to continue to find solace and peace. May Allah, our Almighty God, give them comfort and bless them all. In our religion, we recite some verses from the Quran, our holy book, on our beloved ones, our family members, when we lose them. Today, I will recite these ayat on the ones we lost 20 years ago. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Thank you so much.
And thank you. And now I'd like to introduce the county executive, our Westchester County executive, George Latimer.
Thank you. Let me begin first with an attitude of gratitude. This commemoration day has been made possible by so many different people who serve us so well every day, and we oftentimes don't recognize their talent day to day. We are certainly here in the great respect of our first responders, our police officers, our firefighters, our EMS personnel, our medical personnel. Let's please give them all a round of applause. Let me thank my colleagues in government. We had the great Andrea Stewart Cousins lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, Majority Leader of the State Senate. She's joined by colleagues Shelley Mayer, Jamal Bailey, and Peter Harcum, all of the New York State Senate. Thank you all for being with us on this day. I missed in the second row, I was including him with Assemblyman, Senator Elijah Reichlin Melnick. And we have Assembly Member Chris Burdick with us today, and perhaps other members of the State Assembly who are friends and are colleagues. I'm joined by my colleagues in government. You've already been introduced to the Chairman of the Board of Legislators, the Honorable Ben Boykin, and I'd like my friends and colleagues who are members of the Board of Legislators, please stand for the recognition you so deserve. And may I say, we're also joined by municipal officials from cities, towns, and villages. They too are our partners. I see mayors and supervisors amongst them. All of you, please stand so we can give you proper recognition. I see Mayor Bramson of New Rochelle, Mayor Belmont of Harrison, Mayor Marino of Portchester. Thank you for being with us today. And then finally, the executive team of the county government, the commissioners and the department heads, many of whom served prior to my tenure, but they've served us brilliantly. I'm honored that they are part of my friends, my circle of friends, as they run this county. The commissioners who are here and those that are out there in the audience, please stand up for recognition. Thank you. It was on the evening of September 11th, 2001, that I had probably the most moving of the experiences that I've had. I had the opportunity to be in both the city of Rye and in the town of Mamaroneck, villages of Larchmont and Mamaroneck, for impromptu services that were held that evening, on the evening where that day the towers were taken down, the attack on the Pentagon, and the flight that completed its flight in Shanksville. And that evening when I got home, I walked in on my daughter, who was 1 day away from celebrating her 16th birthday. Tomorrow, add 20 years to that, she's a grown woman, 2 children of her own, one of whom has a birthday in a few days, her 6th birthday. But in that circle of life, she was a young girl 1 day away from her Sweet 16 party, which we postponed. And I had to explain to her the moment that we were in. And for all of you who are parents, you know there is no handbook that you're handed as a mother or father. You figure it out as you go along. And my daughter, beautiful and brilliant young girl, was crying uncontrollably, more for the tragedy of the day, but also for what she was going to miss on and how she knew that would change her birthday forever. And I told her the story that I've oft told in other settings about how on my 10th birthday, I was greeted after lunch with the assassination of President John F. Kennedy on that day. And that has certainly changed the way I look at my birthdays. But there were no words to console Megan, and we did the best we could. And as I just walked across the hallway in the upstairs of the house, I sat down and I had a cell phone of that day that was being charged. Now, if you remember cell phones from 20 years ago, they looked like a brick. They weren't these thin little cell phones that we're carrying around in our pocket now. But from that moment, I thought of something that has informed some of the comments that I've shared today. Some of my colleagues have heard this before. And I looked at the cell phone and I tried to imagine a person who was in Cantor Fitzgerald or Aon, working at the upper floors of the tower, either tower, North or South Tower, who found out when that building shook that they were in a crisis mode and that in some short period of time, there was no means of escape from the tower. All the passageways were blocked. It was 110 stories to the ground below. There was no airborne rescue possible. And those cell phones of the day, those men and women picked up. You go through your own cell phone. You can do it now if you'd like. Look at the people you've spoken to in the last 12 hours. Your spouse, child, perhaps a brother or sister, coworker, somebody you know, most likely people that you loved. And imagine what they went through that day with their cell phone, that they picked it up and dialed for the last time to say goodbye to a person they loved. To the woman that they had built a life with, goodbye, I love you. Tell the kids I love them. I can't make it home tonight, darling, but I'll see you someday. Then there were other brave men and women who went up the tower. They didn't have time to pull out their cell phones. They were there to do a job that they were trained for, but nobody is ever prepared for. And that is to save other people's lives and put your life at risk. And they put their lives at risk, not just in the drama of a 110-story building, but anytime they walk into a fire site, because those firefighters don't know if the floor isn't going to collapse underneath them. That police officer that responds to a domestic disturbance at a home does not know that the aggrieved 2 people in that house, one of them doesn't have a gun and is prepared to use it. But they respond to the calls no matter what they are. And on that day, they responded to the call that existed, and they could see it as the fire trucks were coming over the Brooklyn Bridge, coming down the long, broad avenues of Manhattan. They saw where they were heading, and they knew what their job and their training was leading them to. And both police and firefighters, EMS, even members of the clergy who were there that day. We hope, as individuals, never to be put to that test. We hope that we're never tested to know that that fear that we all have about our mortality is now facing us right here. and that we get a precious few minutes to say goodbye to the people we love and to contemplate eternity. There are other men and women who, after that incident, responded to their duty and did it voluntarily, day and night, on that pile. They exposed themselves to chemicals that they did not know what was in it. And in fairness, they weren't told. But they'd come home at night to their spouses and their families, having done their job as Americans and putting their life in jeopardy. So on that wall, as well as in that ring around that statue, are people who died before their time, before the natural span of life should have been enjoyed. They weren't there to see a grandchild. They weren't there to go to another Super Bowl party. They weren't there to see a child graduate or to celebrate a 30th or 40th or 50th wedding anniversary. They gave up those years for us. We put their names on a monument, on a sculpture, and now we put some additional names on a wall to let them know and the families of those people know that that sacrifice is not forgotten, that the Americans who survived that day still appreciate that sacrifice, a sacrifice that the families are still making every night. The spouse goes to bed alone without that person that loved them and they loved. That is what today is about. A county government, it's not a state government, it's not a federal government. There are issues in the federal government to provide the resources necessary to help the health concerns of the 9/11 individuals who are still with us, that they get the proper medical care, and we urge the federal government officials to do everything they can to do that. But we at our level cannot forget, and that's why today we are here to unveil this addition to the original Rising to honor people who had their lives cut short because they served us as Americans. I pray that none of the rest of us will ever be put to the test that they were put to working on the pile, climbing the stairs of the towers, or being stranded at the upper floors of those towers. I hope that none of us ever face that test again. But I hope if we do, we will show the fortitude and the bravery and the outstanding demeanor and service that these people did. And we remember them forever because of that sacrifice.
Thank you, County Executive. And now the County Executive will be joined by Sarah Woods, widow of Peter Woods, who was an NYPD Sergeant, Hartsdale Fire Commissioner, and as you heard, co-chair of the Westchester County 9/11 First Responders Memorial Committee. They're joined by Peter's two daughters, Anna and Olivia, as they unveil the 9/11 First Responders Memorial for the first time to the public. Now I'll ask the departments in attendance to join us in front of the podium for the lighting of the eternal light.
Right, face. Detail, present, arms. Order, arms. Detail, right face. Dismissed.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now read the names of those killed 20 years ago on 9/11 and those who have succumbed since to 9/11 related illnesses, and that will be followed by a moment of silence.
William Abramson, Peter Craig Alderman, Kazuhiro Anai, Sharon Balcom, Yelena Belikovsky, Michael J. Berkeley,
George Bishop, Michael A. Bacardi, Renee Bratton, Thomas M. Brennan, Jonathan Eric Briley, Mark Brisman.
Lloyd Brown, Ronald Buca, Tom Burke, Mary T. Caulfield, Alex Ciccone, Kevin Francis Cleary.
Robert J. Call, Helen Crossan Kittle, Joan Cullinan, Patrick W. Dennehy, Dwight Darcy, and my best friend, Marissa DiNardo. I miss your laughter and your beautiful smile. I know your soul is at peace with Mom in heaven, and I will honor your memory and love you forever.
Simon A. Denani, John J. Doherty, Christopher Michael Duffy, Paul Fiore, Thomas Patrick, and my older brother, Simon Mirage Dedvukai.
Kevin Joseph Frawley, Alan W. Friedlander, John Patrick Gallagher, Charles Garabini, Peter Galanis, Kieran Joseph Gorman.
Yugi Goya, Gary Haig, Richard B. Hall, Vincent Halloran, FDNY, W. Ward Haynes, Nobihiro Hayatsu.
Katsuyuki Hirai, Thomas Warren Holwick, Jr., Montgomery McCullough Horde, Louis Stephen Inglaterra, Ariel Lewis Jacobs, Arthur Joseph Jones.
Douglas G. Kopiloff, Satoshi Kikochihara, Tasha Kinoshita, Glenn Carrin, Richard J. Clares, Gary Cochler.
Vanessa Langer, Dennis Lavelle, Joseph Levy, Michael A. Lepore, Richard Lynch Jr., Michael J. Lyons, Katie Marie McCloskey.
John T. McLarian, Jr., Francis McGuinn, Michael McHugh, Jr., Barry J. McKean, Robert C. McLaughlin, Jr., Christopher D. Mello, Yamel Marino,
William Minardi, Krishna V. Murthy, George Morrell, Dennis Maroney, Takuya Nakamura, Soshi Numata.
James A. Oakley, Diana J. O'Connor, Amy O'Doherty, Marnie Pont O'Doherty, Samuel Otis, Sean Gordon Corbett O'Neill.
Chris Orgelowitz, Timothy F. O'Sullivan, Michael B. Packer, Thomas Palazzo, James Nicholas Papa George, William H. Pullman, Hemeth Kumar Pooter.
Vincent A. Princhada, Valsa Raju, Robert A. Rasmussen, John Rayo, Joseph R. Reverso, Gregory E. Rodriguez.
Edward Ryan, Tatiana Rajova, Sam Salvo, Eric Sand, Robert Scandol, and Marianne Serva.
Daniel Shea, Joseph Shea, Linda Sheehan, Thomas J. Schubert, Alan Schwartzstein, David Silver.
Michael John Simon, Thomas E. Sinton III, Rochelle M. Snell, Robert Spiesman, Joseph P. Spoor, Jr., Timothy C. Stout.
John Swain, Sean Patrick Talon, Michael A. Tamuccio, Kenichiro Tanaka, Joanna Vidal, Jeffrey Waltz.
James Arthur Waring, Timothy Matthew Welty, William Week, Mark Zeppelin, Evelyn Siminski, Joseph J. Sukala.
Firefighter Gary S. Allo, White Plains Fire Department. Police Officer Christopher M. Barry, NYPD. Sergeant Patrick J. Boyle, NYPD. Sergeant Patrick T. Coyne, NYPD, and my husband, Battalion Chief Kevin R. Burns, FDNY.
John M. Koza, construction industry. Emergency medical technician, Louis DePena Jr., FDNY. Police officer, Kenneth X. Dominique, NYPD. Police officer, Nicholas G. Finelli, NYPD. And my uncle, Lieutenant Clark W. Douglas, White Plains Fire Department.
Firefighter Daniel R. Foley, Fire Department, NY. Detective Mark S. Gatto, New Rochelle Police Department. Richard A. Grace, Construction Industry. Commissioner Peter S. Guyot, Yonkers Fire Department. Firefighter Herbert D. Harriet, Rye Fire Department.
Police Officer Joseph F. Hyde, NYPD. Detective Michael A. Houlihan, NYPD. John A. Lobianco, Construction Industry. Police Officer Anthony Maggiore, Yonkers Police Department. Executive Director Stephen Hitman, FDNY. FDNY. We'll miss you.
Firefighter Gary S. Martin, White Plains Fire Department. Lieutenant Roy D. McLaughlin, Yonkers Police Department. Firefighter Robert A. Mentrasti, Fairview Fire Department. Detective James W. Monahan, NYPD. And my father, Police Officer Walter L. Mallinson, Harrison Police Department.
Lieutenant John T. Moran, FDNY. Firefighter Kevin J. Nolan, FDNY. Police Officer Kathleen O'Connor Funigello, New Rochelle Police Department. Firefighter John Pettiani, Yonkers Fire Department. And my husband, Michael R. O'Hanlon, FDNY. We love you and miss you, Mike. Always in our hearts.
Firefighter Eduardo A. Rivera, Yonkers Fire Department. Detective Joseph E. Seabrook, NYPD. Captain Robert J. Spada, Croton on the Hudson Fire Department. Deputy Chief Frank G. Strollo, New Rochelle Fire Department. And my father, Captain Ronald G. Pfeiffer, Sr., NYPD.
Captain Dennis P. Tortorella, Town of Mamaroneck Fire Department. Firefighter Neil S. Tyndall, Jr., Yonkers Fire Department. Detective Charles W. Wassel, Jr., Peekskill Police Department. Lieutenant Martin C. Wolf, White Plains Fire Department. And my father, James Patrick Sullivan, New York City Transit Authority. We love and miss you, Dad.
Sergeant Peter C. Woods, NYPD. Hartsdale Fire Commissioner and co-chair of this Westchester County 9/11 First Responders Memorial.
Join us now as we observe a moment of silence, followed by taps performed by Mount Pleasant Police Officer Peter Bloom, and that will be followed by a flyover by the Westchester County Police Department. And now we close with the third of our interfaith prayers, led by Calvary Baptist Reverend Erwin Lee Trollinger.
It is our tradition most of the time that we bow our heads in prayer. I'm asking you not to bow your heads at this time. I ask you to look at the monument or look up into the sky. Father of us all, today we remember the time, the hour, when the horror of planes interrupted our average lives. On that day, we witnessed towers falling, and the lives of over 3,000 were transitioned from earth into your eternal presence. We remember the dust and the smoke, and the despair and the grief, and the uncertainty of what laid ahead of us. We remember the sense of vulnerability and the shock, that we remember the numbness that overwhelmed us as we watched hour after hour after hour. We remember, Father, that on that day we called on you out of our despair and hope that your presence is what we needed. On that day, we followed America in one collective voice, and we asked you to God bless America. We remember those who rushed into buildings to help those who guided the wounded down flights of stairs, those who ran through tunnels and lent a helping hand. We remember the hours and the days of binding wounds and healing hurts and giving comfort, and even today, drying tears. We remember neighbors helping neighbors. We remember how the first time in years we collectively waved the American flag.